and I'll read my clapboard, which says, Platonic Love, Winter 2021, Session 5, Divine Madness and Winged Chariot. So over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Bernie. First of all, everyone, apologies for the very, very thick Greek accent, right? Anyway,
wow.
We have a lot of things to discuss. So let's start by recapping last week's session. So the dialogue has three characters: Socrates, Phaedrus, whom we met in the symposium, and Lysias. Lysias was the most famous orator and speechwriter of his time. His father was Cephalos, whom we met in the Republic. Phaedrus has spent his morning listening to Lysias' speech. Indeed, he has heard the speech a few times and has spent time memorizing it and copying. So Phaedrus decided to walk out of the city walls, find a quiet place, and read and contemplate on the speech. On his way, he runs into Socrates. Phaedrus asks Socrates to walk with him outside the walls, and Socrates agrees, which is, quite unusual, knowing that he has hardly ventures outside the walls of Athens. So as they walk along the banks of the river Ilissos, Phaedrus asks Socrates if he believes in the legend of Boreas and Orythia, or a rational interpretation of the myth. And Socrates responds, well, he is indifferent to such rational interpretations, but he would rather spend his time in knowing himself, gnosis avton. And there is a reference to the Oracle of Delphi and the stone that is there, where on one side has gnosis avton, know thyself, and on the other side has miden agan, nothing in excess, which would come across towards the end of today's session. He looks at the beautiful countryside and admits that he feels a little bit out of place, like a stranger. But this is because Socrates loves learning, and the trees and the countryside cannot teach him anything, but the people in the city, in the asti, in the polis, can. And he praises Phaedrus, who used Lysias' speech as a pharmakon. And the word pharmakon has double meaning. It is medicine and poison. And in this case is also the antidote. So Phaedrus uses Lysias as speech, as a pharmakon to lure Socrates out of Athens. And Socrates is driven outside like a hungry animal by dangling in front of him, not a carrot, but the speeches of Lysias. So Lysias' speech is on the subject of love, in particular an address from an older man to a younger man, maybe I should say to a youth, a boy. Lysias argues that it is to the boy's benefit to yield not to a lover, that is someone who has genuine feelings for him, but to a non-lover. The non-lover is more rational, more agreeable, more enduring, less suspicious, less hurtful, less boastful, less engrossing. Friendship with a non-lover demonstrates objectivity and prudence. It doesn't create gossip when you are seen outside together. It doesn't involve jealousy. And it actually allows for a much larger pool to choose from of possible suitors, partners. You will not be giving your favor to someone who is more sick than sound in the head and not thinking straight because he is overcome by love. He explains that it is best to give the favor to one who can best return it, rather than one who needs it most. So erotic love, or eros, according to Lysias, represents a mad force that drives the old man to excessive irrational actions. So it's a turbulent force, and it has to be eliminated from all relationships. So what remains between the non-lover and the beloved, the boy, will be useful to both parties. That is, sexual pleasure for the older man and an allegedly better education for the younger boy. So Phaedrus asks Socrates what he thought of Lysias' speech, and Socrates was not really impressed. He says, well, Lysias is more after style than content. And in addition, well, I thought that there are people that have wrote a lot better about love, such as the poets Sappho and Anacreon. And you know something, I think I can even write a better speech. And Phaedrus pushes Socrates to do so, and Socrates agrees. And he's ready to give a speech, but he veils his head. He covers his head out of embarrassment and shame, because he's not worthy to compare with such an excellent speechwriter as Lysias or the poets. So he starts by calling upon the muses to help him with his speech. He opens by telling a story of a handsome young man that has many suitors. And one of these men persuaded the boy that he's not actually in love, but in reality, he loved the boy as much as anyone and any other person. So could this be a strategy to bring the boy, a seduction strategy? So the man made a speech, the lover, to convince the boy to give his favors to the non-lover rather than the lover. So Socrates quotes the imaginary lover as saying that most people fail to establish the subject of the deliberation, and he proposes that he and the beloved, the boy, agree on a definition of love to serve as the basis of subsequent discussion. And we see that in almost all of Socrates, all of dialogue, Socrates starts by giving a definition. And maybe we can revisit this, or this is a point to revisit next week when we will examine rhetoric and speech writing. So love is a kind of desire, yet men who are not in love also desire the beautiful. To distinguish a man who is in love from a man who is not, one must realize the two principles that rule men: the inborn desire for pleasures and the acquired judgment that pursues what is best. When the former is in control, the state is hubris. It's an excess of desire. When the latter is in control, the state is called being in your right mind. This is sophrosine. And we're talking here about restraint and temperance. Excess, desire, excessive desire has several names. For example, the excessive desire for food is gluttony, and so on. But the desire that is most powerful, the one that has led to this very speech, is the desire to take pleasure in beauty, in eros. That's 238c. A kind of madness that overpowers restraint. When the irrational drive toward pleasure overpowers restraint, this is called love. And at this point, Socrates breaks off his speech, turns to Phaedrus and says, well, I think that I'm in the grip of something divine. And he attributes this perhaps to the environment, the idyllic location. And I'm quoting, listen to me in silence, for the sport seems really to be a divine one. So by any chance, if by any chance I become possessed by the nymphs, as my speech proceeds, don't be surprised. As it is, I'm already close to uttering in dithyrambs. Dithyrambos, the dithyramb is a choral song, choral song or poem associated with the worship of Dionysus or Bacchus, who is the god of fertility and wine, and he is the one who inspires madness, that frenzied madness, and he is associated with mystic rites. So Socrates continues his speech, and his speech is really a counterpart to Odysseus' argument. But rather than presenting the benefits of the non-lover, Socrates concentrates and addresses the negative influences of the lover. Eros can be a form of madness in which the inborn desire for beauty overwhelms one's sense of morality and control in pursuing what is best. Such madness destroys both the soul and the body of the boy and will bring him no benefits. Since the lover is driven by excessive desire, he will surely seek what is most pleasurable in his beloved. Such a sick man takes pleasure in the weaker rather than the stronger, so the boy will necessarily be weaker. The man will try to make him weaker. By the same token, the man will delight in the boy's mental defects rather than his strengths, and the man's jealousy will steer the boy away from any positive influences. Such a man will serve no use as mentor or friend, since he will retard rather than develop the beloved's intellectual abilities. Similar with the physical development. The lover thus becomes obsessive and controlling. And in this sense, as Socrates says, he is worse than a flatterer or a mistress. At least you get some benefit from them, but not from the lover. And anyway, at some stage, the love ceases, fades away. And afterwards, the boy will be forced to chase after his undelivered rewards. There will be anger developing, and because of he would have given favors to the lover, but he wouldn't have received anything. The lover has been harmful to his property, to his physical fitness, and absolutely devastating to the cultivation of his soul, which, according to, again, to Socrates, is the most valuable thing to gods and men. So Socrates concludes that as wolves love lambs, so lovers love their loves. I think that says everything.
Say that again.
As wolves love lambs,
Yeah.
so lovers love their loves. So
hang on, I was just wondering, why isn't the beloved giving the favors to the boy?
sorry?
Why is the beloved not delivering the favors to the boy?
No, the lover gives the love to the boy, but he loves very possessively. You know, like he wants to consume the beloved, the boy. This is what that refers to. I mean, do wolves love the lambs? Of course they love eating them. consuming.
I think you got it the other way around, Amira.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got the other. I've been confused from the beginning.
Is it incorrect to think of it as a transaction?
No.
Well, this is what they are pushing. Yeah.
Yes.
Have a transaction, and you won't encounter any such problems.
That's right.
So
Favor for a favor. Well,
Yeah.
so to speak. Well, it's more like
so Socrates finishes his speech, and Phaedrus is surprised and asks him, well, how come you didn't praise the virtues of the non-lover? And Socrates explains that, well, look, I had to stop because don't you realize that the nymphs to whom you so cleverly exposed me will take complete possession of me? And then he says that for every disadvantage of the lover, there is a corresponding advantage in the non-lover. And Socrates, he doesn't want to make an epic speech, and he gets up and ready to start his walk back to the city of Athens. But as he is about to leave, he is stopped by the familiar divine sign that we have seen before, his demon, demonio, which always occurs and just before Socrates is about to do something that he should not. So a voice from this very spot forbids Socrates to leave before he makes atonement for some offense to the gods. And he says to Phaedrus, like, look, both speeches were really dreadful, foolish, and impious. And he states that, you know that I am a seer. Well, not a very good one, but I can sense things enough. And I can feel that I made an offense. And he says, love, after all, is Aphrodite's son, one of the gods. And if love is God or something divine, he can't be bad in any way. Similar, we saw that in the Republic about how Plato or Socrates feels about the gods. So Socrates, he has to correct his previous speech in which he vilified love. He explains that he will use an ancient rite of purification. And he mentions Stesichoros. Stesichoros was a poet who got blinded because he wrote that Helen was the cause of what happened in Troy. And when he realized that this wasn't correct, he rewrote the poem and he recanted what he said and gained his eyesight again. So Socrates is going to compose a palinode to love. Palinode from, I know that a lot of us are interested in ancient Greek words. So from the word odi, which is a song, which is a poem, and pali, so you go over it again. And this time, he is not veiled. He wants everyone to see that he's truly remorseful. And again, he invokes the muses, and proceeds to give a speech praising the lover. So he is about to start his second speech. Before we go on, are there any questions, any comments on C.S.'s speech or Socrates' first speech? Okay, so we go on and we start today's session. So Socrates begins by saying, it isn't true, and I'm quoting here, that one should rather grant favors to the one not in love on the grounds that the first is mad while the second is sane. That might have been true if madness was simply a bad thing. However, the greatest of goods come to us through madness, provided that it is bestowed by divine gift. So Socrates completely changes the course in this speech. He overturns the basis of Lysias' argument and that of his own speech that he gave earlier, arguing that madness of a certain kind is actually desirable and it is even divine. And this is the enthusiasmos. And like the divine gets inside you, thea mania, divine mania, madness. And in 44a, he mentions that there are 4 kinds of such divine madness. And the first one is the prophetic madness. And we see that in Pythia, at the oracle of the Delphi, and the priestesses of Dodoni, because those people are really frenzied with madness. The gods really come inside them. Now, we know that Plato has a very low opinion for the mantis, that is, all those soothsayers, the prophets, etc. And he wants to separate the mantis, the divinators, from the ones that are truly possessed by the gods. And he uses etymology and semantics. So he uses the word maniki, which is comes and is related to madness, and mandiki, which is related to prophecy. And similarly, ionoistiki, which is related to iome, which means to think, expect, while ionistiki, the omega, right, is a word deriving from the word ionos, meaning bird, referring to those people that can foretell the future by looking at the flight of the birds or examining the viscera of the birds. The second kind of madness is the ritual madness. It's the madness that provides relief to those in hardship, which can occur in a way of prophecies, prayers, mystic rites, and purification. And this relates to certain, it could also relate to families that have been cursed, etc. And one thing that comes in mind is Orestes, who had to go through purification acts after he murdered his mother and lover. And this is done through divine madness. He gets the antidote, or what he has to do. The third type of divine madness comes from the muse. And as Plato writes, which awakens the soul to a Bacchic frenzy of songs and poetry. Now, again, isn't this, I find, sorry about this, I find Phaedrus so poetic, so poetical. It really speaks to the soul. Anyway, I won't digress. But we know that how Plato feels about the poets, right? Not highly at all, but he says that if someone thinks that mere expertise will make him a good poet, his poetry will be eclipsed by that of the mad. And now we come to the fourth kind of madness, which he will discuss at length. And love. Love is sent from the gods to help both the lover and the beloved. And this kind of madness brings about the greatest good fortune. And Socrates adds, the proof will be disbelieved by the clever and believed by the wise. So love too is a good kind of God-sent madness. And Socrates sets out to prove that love is a beneficial and divine madness. But as per usual, before he does that, he says that we require an understanding of the soul, both human and divine. And in order to understand that, we have to first understand the nature of the soul. And this is a small section, 245c. And I really get goosebumps when I read, especially the first sentence, Psyche passa athanatos. Every soul is immortal. And he talks here about the immortality of the soul, which we have seen also in Phaedrus and in the Republic. So the soul never stops moving and is not moved by anything else and causes other things to move. It is the source of everything else that moves. The soul is a self-mover, and thus it's incapable of being destroyed or started up. It doesn't have birth and it doesn't have death. A soul is always in motion, aikinitos, and as a self-mover doesn't have a beginning. It is a first principle, something that never comes into being or perishes, but causes other things to come into being. And because of that, because it meets these characteristics, Socrates says that it necessarily has to be immortal. Bodily objects moved from the outside have no soul. They are apsycha, apsychon in singularly. While those that move from within, they have a soul, they are in soul, they are empsychon. So moving from within, all souls are self-movements, and hence the immortality is necessary. So after having argued for the immortality of the soul, Socrates now says, enough on this subject, let's talk about the structure of the soul. But no, we can't talk really about the structure of the soul. This is a superhuman task. It will take a very long time. And really, this is something that only the gods can do. However, though we cannot discuss the attributes of the soul, we can tell what it resembles. And now we come to the allegory, the myth of the charioteer. Perhaps okay, I'm a little bit biased, perhaps the centerpiece of the Phaedrus, and a piece which is also quite poetical. So the soul is a composite, a union of a charioteer and its winged horses.
Excuse me, Maria, do we want to have a little break before we,
Yeah.
we get into that? Yeah, there might be just a few questions.
Yeah,
and then-
anyone has any questions thus far?
or comments?
I've sort of forgot what Lysia's argument was and what Socrates is.
Okay, so Lysias and Socrates, in his first speech, they argued that it's better for a young boy, for a youth, to give himself to a non-lover,
Yeah.
because they won't take advantage of him, and they will help him, with his education and move in society. But Socrates now, in his second speech, he recants that. He says, no, it's better to give yourself to somebody who is actually in love, because this love is given by the gods and it is beneficial. The gods cannot give anything bad. And he will continue and prove this point down the track.
Okay. Thank you.
And it appears to be that he's totally contradicting himself.
Yeah.
But we can get to that, and maybe he isn't when he talks about the different parts of the soul and the different horses and whether they dominate or not.
It's very complicated.
I maybe I don't want to digress too much, but I love that you're putting in the ancient Greek text as you're reading. It's fabulous. And what I'd like to know is, in the ancient Greek text, when they say bacchic or bacchanal frenzy, do they say the Bacchus, or do they say Dionysius?
Well, they actually speak about Menaves. Yeah, Vacche, they use the word. Yeah, but it is for Dionysos.
Okay, because I thought that Bacchus was the Roman.
No. Remember that there are tragedies also with the name Vacche. I think there is a tragedy with this name. Yeah.
Okay. Sue had a question, I think.
I haven't read this week's readings for certain reasons, but I just wasn't sure, because I've done this course before, and what's to come is going to be an absolute privilege to hear Maria deliver this speech. Just the link between the recap from last week to this week's readings, to me, I just haven't made that connection between bridging that gap between the speeches that Maria's just summarised for us and what's to come next. I'm not sure if there's a connection somehow. It just seems a bit tenuous in my mind anyway.
Yeah, look, the connection is that Lysias and Socrates in his first speech argued that it's better for the boy, the beloved, to give himself to the non-lover, because that way he will be supported with education and moving into society. The reason being that the non-lover is sane. He is not mad with love. And it is like a transaction. And this speech, the speech that Socrates has started delivering, he contradicts that. He recants his previous speech, and he argues that, well, no, this madness, the madness of love, is a gift from the gods, and it can lead to a lot of benefit. And it's better actually to give yourself to a lover. This is, so two very similar speeches arguing the same thing, and then a very different speech arguing for the positive, for the opposite. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Anyone else? I've got a couple of comments. Just on the topic of the divine madness. This is divine madness. This is where this divine madness thing comes from, and it was very influential in the Florentine Renaissance when they translated Plato directly from the Greek, and they translated himself Ficino and Pico della Mariola, and these other Renaissance people were very interested in this and getting into this divine frenzy as a way of communing with God. But as far as it goes with the poets, it's an interesting and contested and sort of ambiguous, Plato's full of contradiction, relationship that Plato has with the poets. And he's quoting Homer all the time. I think I read somewhere where Plato quotes, and as an authority most of the time, says, well, we know this because Homer says it, so it must be true sometimes. I think that's in the Phaedrus somewhere, I mention it. And so he uses Homer as authority. And then when you get to the Republic, he then says, well, you know, there's going to be no poets in the Republic, except maybe these poets that do this propaganda, do these nice myths, like the sort of myths that he does, you know, in his dialogues. But just to give the other side to that, there's related to this divine madness of the poets, there's this short dialogue called Ion, which I was just looking, I don't think it is in the Penguin, it's quite hard to get. But this is where Socrates has an interview with one of these rapturous, if that's the, you know, what they do is they go around from city to city, and in the amphitheaters, these just one man will perform to, apparently they say, like 20,000 people. I don't know how they could do that with no amplification, and will perform passages, especially from Homer, and play all the characters and laugh and cry tears and just totally get into the poetry. And Plato talks about it, what he's getting into there, as being a bit like magnets. Like there's rings of magnetism. There's the divine, and then there's the poet Homer, and then there's him, and then the audience is brought in, and everyone has this frenzied sort of experience, this divine sort of experience, and it's not necessarily negative there. And he relates that to philosophy and the divine, reaching for the divine in philosophy. So yeah, it's difficult to really understand Plato's relationship to enthusiasm that comes through poetry.
He talks about anthos BDs, one who a poet that is enthused with the divine and is in that state of frenzy.
Yeah, that's right. And so the things that he finds concerning is that they appeal to the emotions, that they're very powerful and persuasive, and that they can take sentiment in the wrong direction, not in the right direction for, you know, the good state. You know, you just imagine the Soviet Union or something singing their songs about the workers and all that.
No deal for the Republic. Yeah, no deal.
Yeah. So there's that. I might just mention one more thing before we go on. This self-moving soul is quite interesting. And Maria, this is what
you're going to say. Are you going to talk about Anima Mundi?
No. Well, that's later, isn't it? Isn't that later or not? Oh, that's it. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah. Well, you can talk about that, but
no, because
soul is in the singular and the plural here, isn't it, Maria?
Well, in the text, it's singular.
Yeah, so this is important. When he says soul, he doesn't say in each individual soul. He talks about soul as like this one thing, like this something that's indwelling in all of us, but is one thing. And in that way, we're all connected. It's not like we have all these individual souls, which are like individual spheres. It's actually that soul is one thing.
So is he talking about like the collective consciousness that Jung proposes? So that's where that comes from, perhaps.
You could relate it to that.
Yes.
You could relate it to that. That's right. So it's a very different notion of soul than this individualized soul that's coming on here. I mean, there definitely is discussion of individual souls, but we've got to see it as connected. And then that's the world soul, which in Latin then became anima. Anima is the Latin for the soul, and anima mundi, you might have heard of that. So it was very influential in medieval times. But it's also interesting in terms of actually what we're doing in the Sophists about a dynamis and self-movement. And later in the academy, at least Aristotle talks about this, that Xenocrates, supposedly one of the followers of Plato, the leaders of the academy, had an idea that the soul is unity, the one, you know, the Platonic one, the monad, that moves itself. And we can kind of relate this to in the Sophists, although we're not reading the Sophists, where knowing is motion and is power. And so the soul is always moving itself and creating objects, creating other things. So it kind of relates generally to the epistemology of Plato. So that's either that is Plato's view, or it was developed in the academy after Plato, this Socrates view, which Aristotle will describe in his Metaphysics. Oh, in his book on the soul. Aristotle wrote a whole book on the soul. Okay.
Oh, that's tempting. That's tempting. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone else before we get into the chariots? Divine madness.
No, except like Maria, I think it's beautiful.
Well, Maria, I say lead on. Let's jump on the chariot and let's get going.
Okay. So the soul is a composite, a union of a charioteer and his winged horses. And the charioteers and the horses of the souls of the gods are all good and perfect. The charioteer of the human soul drives a pair of horses. One horse is white, is beautiful, perfect in appearance, of good and noble character, and it is easy to control. The other horse is black, not beautiful in appearance, of bad and ignoble character, and it is hard to control. So the charioteer of the human soul has a difficult and troublesome task in driving his chariot. It is clear that the charioteer and the two horses represent the tripartite soul that we saw in the Republic. For those who have done the Republic, remember there are three elements in the soul: reason, logos or logistikon, the intellect, in this case represented in the charioteer, spirit, courage or thimoides, which is the rational or moral drive, the righteous indignation, and in this case is the white horse, and desire, appetite, epithymikon, which are the irrational passions and desires, which is the black horse. So when the wings are perfect and undamaged, the soul flies high and governs the whole world. But when the wings are damaged and lost, it is swept and falls towards the earth and keeps falling until it hits solid ground and then finds an earthly body to occupy. This composite, this union of body and soul constitutes a living thing, and it's designated as mortal. Socrates does not give a definition of immortal because, as he says, well, we have never seen a god. We don't know, but we can imagine that the union of body and soul in a god who is immortal is going to be perfect and eternal. And at this point, he brings this picture of a majestic procession that takes place in heavens. The procession is headed by Zeus, the father and the king of all gods. Zeus drives his chariot in the heavens, keeping all things in order and taking care of all things. He is followed by the rest of the gods as per their rank, their entourages, their armies, as well as the lesser gods and divinities and spirits and demonia. Everyone knows their place and what they have to do, and anyone can join the procession. Plato states that there is no jealousy in this celestial place. Maybe we can talk about this later, because this is definitely not the way that gods behave. The only god that does not participate in the procession is Hestia, and she takes her place in the dwelling of the gods. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, the fireplace, the house. So Plato talks about 12 main Olympian, the Olympian gods, and he positions them in the heavens. Now, is he referring to an astronomical system? Is Hestia, Earth, which remain stationary while the rest of the heavenly bodies move in a circuit. Is this a reference to the 12 signs of the zodiac? It is not as clear as it was in the myth of air. Remember the myth of air from the Republic and the circles of the spindle of necessity. There is a clear correlation there to the heavenly bodies. So anyway, the gods soar in the heavens, and they easily make the steep ascents because they have the perfect horses who are perfect in nature, character, and work in unison. So they fly to the end of the universe, the rim, the back of the world. And then they go to what Plato names as Hyperuranius place, a place that is above and beyond the heavens. And at this place, they gaze at the true being, the ousia in the ancient text. Actually, ousia ondos ousa, true being, the ousia that is essence, that truly is, truly exists. And this is without form, without color, and cannot be touched. It cannot be seen by the eyes of the body, but only through reason, intellect, which is the pilot of the soul. It is the charioteer. It is true knowledge and wisdom. It is the absolute truth and absolute form. And in this area, the souls of the gods and those who join them are nourished and rejoice and feel happy. And they stay at this place until the revolution, the circuit, brings them back to the same spot. And whilst at this revolution, they behold absolute justice, temperance, and all the other forms. Again, this we're talking about the forms and not the qualities. And the forms are absolute and exist in this absolute internal reality. So once the gods are nourished and rejuvenated, they descend to the heavens, they drive the chariots home, put the horses in the manger, feed them with ambrosia, and give them to drink nectar, as you do. So this is what happens with the gods. But what of the human soul? The human soul also has wings, and the function of the wing is to carry what is heavy upwards to the region where the gods dwell. The human soul also needs nourishment to keep the wings in perfect condition. It knows that there is a place, the middle, where the true being lives, exists, and they can provide the wings with sustenance. But the human soul has a problem. It can control the white horse, but not the black one. The white horse obeys the charioteer and soars to the heavens, wanting to join the gods. But the black horse provides resistance, and instead it wants to move downwards towards the earth. And some charioteers are better skilled and have done a better job training the horses. These souls follow the gods, and by raising their heads, they just take a glimpse of the outer region. But the horses are unruly, so the chariot rises up and then sinks down. But still, these souls, they manage to get a glimpse, and in that way, they manage to get some nourishment and maintain their wings. For the rest of the human souls, the situation is a bit worse. The drive is very turbulent, and Plato is quite descriptive about it. There is turmoil, mayhem, sweat, rivalry, confusion. Chariots collide with each other. Charioteers and horses become lame. Wings are broken. Plato puts us in the race course, and think here of the chariot race in the movie Ben-Hur. Okay, so these souls cannot fly to the outer region. They cannot see the absolute truth and fill themselves with absolute nourishment. the myth seeing the absolute reality. They stay in the middle heavens where they feed on opinion instead. Trophy doxastin. Remember in the Republic, the divided line, doxa, not true knowledge. Continuing with the myth, the next section has to do a little bit with metaphysics. In the myth of air, we had the law of necessity governing the journey of the souls. Here we have the law of destiny, adrastia. So according to the law of destiny, the souls that manage to glimpse the outer region and the true reality are left unharmed for the period of one revolution. But Plato does not does not say how long is that period. If the soul manages to always have a view of the true reality, it always remains unharmed. But if it fails to do so, then it joins the rest of the struggling souls and is filled with forgetfulness and evil, and the wings wither and become lost, and eventually they fall on earth and take on an earthly body. And the law of adrastia provides some sort of a rebirth, a rank of merit according to how much truth the soul managed to sing. But adrastia is also another name for Nemesis, which is the goddess of retribution. And I feel that this fits here perfectly with the notion of karma and the wheel of samsara and rebirth that we encounter in Eastern religions. So anyway, there are 9 ranks or classes of rebirth. The souls that have sinned the most will be reborn, surprise, surprise, as philosophers, lovers of music, lovers of love, lovers of beauty. The next class of souls will be reborn as wise kings or military rulers, abiding by the laws. The third class will be reborn as politicians, civil servants, financiers, head of households. All these classes, they need integrity and morality, and those positions have the capacity to influence and do a lot of good to other human beings. The fourth class will be reborn as athletes, physical trainers or physicians, because they are dealing with the body. The fifth one will be reborn as prophets and priests, religious experts, but not like Pythia or Sibyl or the priestesses, for example, in Dodoni, because these souls or persons are not possessed by the gods. They don't have the divine madness. The sixth class is reborn as poets and such artists, but again, not the type that we talked before, the ones that they are enthused by the muses. The seventh class is reborn as artisans and craftsmen and farmers, and it's interesting to see that these occupations have less worth than the athletes or the poets. And we know that Plato had a little bit of aversion and prejudice on actual physical labor, and it could be because of this. Anyway, those classes 4, 5, 6, and 7, they're not like the first 3. They don't have that much influence and impact on society, or at least on the soul of society. The 8th class of souls is reborn as demagogues and sophists, and we know how much Plato loves those. And the 9th class are reborn as tyrants. So the last 2 can cause true harm to society. And now I like to talk very little about what I call Platonic statistics. It takes 10,000 years for the soul to regrow its wings and to be able to soar back to the heavens. But a lover of philosophy, by living a philosophic life, can shorten this time to 3,000 years. A really good discount here.
That should be the plug. That should be the plug for the courses. Brilliant.
And every 1,000 years, there is an incarnate life. And we saw that also in the Republic, the myth of air. The first life is always human. When this life is accomplished, the souls are brought to judgment, and according to their merit, they either go to a place of punishment beneath the earth, Tartarus, or to a place of reward in some region of the heavens, Elysia Pedia. After 1,000 years have passed, they can then have the next incarnation, according to allotment and the choice. As in the myth of air, there is destiny and fate, but there is also choice. In the ancient Greek text, klerosis teke eresis, allotment, but also choice. And there is also transmigration, that the soul can enter an animal, or the soul of the animal that was previously a human can re-enter a human. But only the soul that has beheld the truth may enter into a human form, because only man has the ability to think and understand the forms and move from the many senses and sensual experience to the reality of true knowledge. And this is done by reasoning and by recollection, and we saw that in Phaedrus. The recollection of the glimpse of the true forms when the charioteer was stretching his neck enough to have a glimpse of the absolute reality during the divine procession. But all souls do not easily recall by what they saw in that journey with the gods. But the soul of a philosopher has some recollection. And the philosopher works hard in making himself perfect. In 249D, he alone becomes perfect. Teleos ondos monos γίνεται. Only he becomes perfect. Telos, which means end, but also a goal, and it's also the mystic rite. That's where we get the name teleti, the mystery, like weddings, funerals, and things like that. They are mystery, teleti. So the philosopher becomes absorbed by the idea of getting close to the divine and ignores earthly interest. And he's criticized by others, and he's labeled a madman. And this madness, the love of wisdom, is the fourth divine madness. And before we go on to talk a little bit more about the divine madness, are there any questions on the myth? Or any comments?
Eric, you're on mute. I might have put you on mute.
Maria, I'd like you to clarify this. I think this is true, but I'd like to know your opinion. That when you talk about human beings, most of these human beings are celestial, aren't they? They don't necessarily come down to earth. It's only the ones that are unbalanced, lose their wings, are borne down by the bad horse in pulling the chariot down. But most human beings, they're not gods, but they're up there and they're able to contemplate the eternal truths to some extent, aren't they?
Yes,
do you think that's true?
But there will be the souls of humans who they control their steeds, and they can always get a glimpse, and in that way they can remain in the upper heavens. But the majority, I mean, eventually they will lose their wings, they will become malnourished, lose the wings and fall in the earth. the beings that are perpetual in the heavens and always seeing the absolute forms are the souls of the gods and the lower ranks, and some human beings. But I feel that the best thing that we can do in order to regain our wings and go up there is lead a philosophical life. I don't think that we can always be there. That's why you have the reincarnation, the rebirth, to provide you with a way to possibly, yes, do that, go to that region for a lot longer. Did that make sense?
Well, I think it does. If you imagine these beings with wings that are neither gods or earthly beings, I think you get the kind of angels you see in Renaissance paintings, you know,
yes.
or angels generally. And not all angels are equal. There are tiers of them, a bit like the theatre, you know, some are in the dress circle, some are down in the stalls, but you know, there are ranks of them. There's a comment I'd like to make rather than a question, which is this: not everybody goes around following Zeus. You can be a follower of Zeus in your tour of the greater universe outside the visual one, but there are 12 main gods, and instead of following Zeus, you might find yourself following Apollo, or you might find yourself following Athena. The reason I'm pointing this out is that it makes a lot of difference if you come down to earth and you fall in love. That if you did your initial tour following Zeus, then you will want to be Zeus-like, and your lover will want you to be Zeus-like. But if you're Apollonian, then you will want to be like Apollo. And so, to a certain extent, there are 12 basic characters that all human beings will have. I don't mean you can have all 12. You have one of the 12.
Yeah, and we will talk about that in a second. With the angels, it's the charioteer does not have wings. It's the horses that have wings. So yeah, it's a little bit different. I just want to. Are there any other comments? Can I just say something that? Yeah, there you are. I mean, here we have the black and white shows, the charioteer having wings, but the myth actually talks about the steeds having a myth. So I say that I don't believe that that is a true representation of the human soul.
Sorry, Maria, I didn't mean to contradict you there. I just thought it was an opportunity. Then I realized that it looked like I was contradicting you. Sorry.
No, it's a good, because you did put a picture. A picture in everyone's mind. So it's good.
But Maria, so when the souls of the humans that get the wings get damaged and they sort of don't see the outer heavens and they fall to the earth, do they enter humans? Do they?
The first incarnation is a human, but after that they can enter into an animal. Remember from the myth of Erin in the Republic, Orpheus decides to be reincarnated as a swan. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the human lot. And there are some a number of heroes, you know, that want to do that. So yes, there is transmigration.
Can I ask, Eric, you mentioned something about the human soul having 12 facets? Or
no, there are 12 different personalities, I suppose you could say.
12 different personalities.
And you can it depends. It's not a choice of yours. It's whether your soul, when it came down from the Hema, or when it was up in the heavens, whether its initial circuit of knowledge following Zeus or following one of the other 11 gods. And that's important in Plato, because of those of us down here on earth, when we fall and we want to be as good as possible, some of us want to be truth.
Is that something that's quoted from Phaedrus?
Yes,
it's actually in the Phaedrus.
It's in the section below. Yes, after this.
I would like to add that if in the Timaeus, as some of you would know, that we're all male initially. It's just that if we, if our black horse gets really out of control, that's when we are reincarnated as, wait for it, female. And if, as females, our black horse gets out of control, that's when we come back as an ant or a dog or something like that. That is, that these souls do not have a gender, well, until they're down on earth.
I'm so
I like that.
Forward to doing.
I thought there would be an outburst of feminist rage, but anyway, nobody seems to mind.
We have this ethic, Eric, that you're supposed to put yourself on mute when you're not talking, and so that's the trouble, is you don't get that chorus of laughter. I saw some amusement and outrage on faces.
Oh, that's good.
Did the Greeks really believe all this stuff? Did they?
Well, hold on. I only know a few Greeks, and most of them are with us right now. But Plato certainly, that's what Plato says.
Plato certainly does believe in reincarnation and transmigration, and it's interesting. I don't know whether we very quickly. The Upanishads, especially the Bhagavad Gita from the Mahabharata, has a similar myth about the soul. And the book, the Katha Upanishad, allegedly it was written either in 800 BC, and it was written by Hindus, or 500 BC, and it was written by Buddhists. And listen to this: know the higher self as the Lord of the chariot, and the body as the chariot. Know the soul as the charioteer, and the mind and emotional nature as the reins. They say that the powers of perception and action are the horses, that objective things are the roadways for these. The self joined with the powers through the mental and emotional nature is called the enjoyer of experience by the wise. And it goes on. Excuse me, it's very, very similar. And clearly there must have been some communication. I mean, we know that the Pythagoreans were traveling. Excuse me. And we know that there were Greek colonies and other people were traveling. So there must have been some communication then.
Yeah, or the communication could have come later if it was going from Plato to Plato the other way, which is what people have been looking for through that area in northern Pakistan, what's called Gandhara. Gandhara, yeah, but they haven't found anything. Maria, I hope you're okay there. I'm just looking at the time. We don't have to tonight, of course, because it's good to have a chat. But will we continue on and do a bit more?
Yes, let's continue and see whether we will be able to finish.
Yeah, but it's okay if we don't. So let's see how we go.
Yeah.
All right.
So the next section talks a little bit about the divine madness of love. In 149d, Socrates says, well, this is the outcome of my whole account of the fourth kind of madness, the madness of the man who, on seeing beauty here on earth and being reminded of true beauty, becomes winged. He's unable to fly upwards, but because he looks up to the heavens like a bird, he neglects what things are below, and he is regarded as mad. And this is the best of all kinds of divine possession. When he partakes in this madness, excuse me, the man who loves the beautiful is called the lover. So, as we say, only a few souls will remember reality well enough for such madness to be triggered by earthly things. Those that can remember are startled when they see a reminder, and they are overcome with the memory of beauty. And Socrates talks about beauty because beauty can be perceived vaguely, even on earth. Beauty was among the most radiant things to see beyond heaven. And on earth, it sparkles through vision. Excuse me. The clearest and the keenest of our senses, because beauty alone of all forms has any representation on earth. Forms like justice and self-control and wisdom, we cannot see, they are invisible to mortal eyes. It's amidra organa, dull organs. When the soul looks upon the beloved, the beautiful boy, it experiences the utmost joy. The vision of beauty on earth evokes a fear for the divine, followed by deep reverence. When a man perceives the truly beautiful boy, he feels a chill and then begins to sweat. The stream of beauty flows into his eyes, warming him up and feeding his soul's wings. And then the stiffened wing begins to relax and it grows again. Desire, which has been imprisoned, pours over the soul of the lover. The germ of the wing unfolds. There is itching and cutting and stings and pangs of birth, like the cutting teeth. Plato here is quite graphic in a way in describing arousal and ejaculation. Father and mother and goods and laws and properties are nothing to him. When he is with the boy, he feels joy and happiness, and the aching and itching subside. But in the absence of the boy, aching and itching return as a throbbing pain. But the memory of the boy allows the soul to recover its joy. So the beloved is also the lover's physician. And this mixture of pain and joy is love. Love enslaves the soul and makes it forget everything else. And mortal calls this love, eros, but the immortals calls this theros or pterotos, or the dove or the winged one, in order to represent the force of his wings. And now we come a little bit to what Eric was saying. The way the soul acts on earth, including its relation to the beloved, to the boy, depends entirely on the God with which the soul traveled in heaven. The lover will tend to seek out and encourage similar characteristics in the beloved. For instance, followers of Zeus will prefer the philosophically inclined or the leaders. Followers of Aries probably they tend towards belligerent nature, and they are fierce and violent. And followers of Hera look for royal, for regal love. So those who follow the particular God in the heavens will tend to both imitate that God in earthly life and be drawn to others who exhibit similar characteristics. They will try to bring out those traits even more strongly in the boy, in the beloved, showing no envy, no mean-spirited lack of generosity, but making every effort to draw the boy into being totally like themselves and the God to whom they are devoted. In 253 being, drawing him closer to the divine. And maybe we can, I can just continue for a little bit. Socrates now returns to...
Hang on, I'll just check. Are people okay to stay for another 10 minutes beyond time, or is there an issue?
I have to get going. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
I have a
Okay.
253B.
I think it's magnificent. I'd love to hear more.
I'm loving it too, Maria. It's magnificent, but I unfortunately got something else to dial into.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing.
Okay,
It's
well,
fine. Yeah.
I might go a little bit longer and record it. We'll get the recording going.
We've got 5 more minutes, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Off you go, Maria. Yeah.
Okay, so Socrates returns to the myth of the chariot. Not again. The myth, the soul is composed of 3 parts: the 2 horses and the charioteer. We know of the white horse, which is on the right, and it's of noble character. And that horse is a lover of honor with modesty and self-control. But the other horse, the black, which is ugly and wild, is a companion to wild boasts and indecency. Every time the charioteer gazes into the eyes of the one he loves, the charioteer is filled with warmth and desire. At the sight of beauty, the good horse is controlled by its sense of shame. But the bad horse, overcome with desire, does everything it can to go into the boy and suggest to it the pleasures of sex. And there is a fight, and the charioteer tries to control the horses. The bad horse eventually wears out the charioteer and the white horse and drags them towards the boy. But when the charioteer looks into the boy's face, he remembers the sight of the forms of beauty and self-control he had when he was up there with the gods, and pulls the reins back violently. The conflict grows more and more severe. And at last, the charioteer, throwing himself backwards, forces the bit out of the clenched teeth of the bad horse, and pulling harder than ever at the reins, cover its tongue and jaws with blood, and forces the horse to rest his legs and haunches pain upon the ground. And when this happens several times, the black horse is eventually tamed and humbled. And as this occurs over and over, the bad horse becomes obedient when seeing the boy's face. And in this way, he allows the lover's soul to follow the boy in reverence and awe. Now, for the boy initially may resist the lover, but he eventually allows the man to spend time with him, since good naturally associates with good. And as he spends time with the man, the boy realizes that this friendship, which is inspired by the gods, exceeds all other friendship in his life. And at this one, it's a very, very small section that I would like to read. So this is 255d. So he loves, yet knows not what he loves. He does not understand. He cannot tell what has come upon him. Like one who has caught a disease of the eye from another, he cannot account for it, not realizing that his lover is, as it were, a mirror in which he beholds himself. So eventually the boy also begins to feel the effect of desire flowing through him and having the mirror image of love in him. And he wants to see, touch, kiss, quoting here, and lie down with the lover. The lover's love is reciprocated, and the opportunity for sexual contact again presents itself. If the lover and the beloved surpass this desire, they would have won the true Olympic contest, which, by the way, they start on Friday. They pass their lives the greatest happiness which is attainable by man. This is so deep. And they continue being masters of themselves. They will follow the path of philosophy and grow wings after death, and their souls will return to heaven. It is the perfect combination of human self-control and divine madness. Those, though, who have tried, but due to some carelessness, they give in, they may still have a happy destiny. This is Plato's middle way, I think. Though a bit inferior because they're not winged, okay? They do not become weightless, but they are spared from punishment after death, and they will eventually grow wings together when the time comes. And so this is the Platonic love, the Platonic relationship, referring to, usually it refers to a romantic relationship without sexual intimacy. But Plato, however, does not exclude such intimacy on an absolute basis. So long as the man and the boy treat each other respectfully and thoughtfully, occasional controlled sexual pleasures may be acceptable to the soul. Both parties simply must know their own limits, and they must keep those black horses under control. And now we go to the other side of the inscription of the stone at the Oracle of Delphi. Nothing in excess, miden agan. So Socrates concludes, like a lover's friendship is divine, while that of a non-lover offers only cheap human dividends and tosses the soul about on earth for thousands of years. And Socrates concludes by praying to the god of love. And I'm quoting here 257b. These are the blessings of love, and thus have I made my recantation in finer language than before. I did so in order to please Phaedrus. If I said what was wrong at first, please attribute my error to Lysias. And this is interesting, who ought to study philosophy instead of rhetoric, like his brother Polemarchus. Then he will not mislead his disciple, but in the ancient text is Erastes, his lover Phaedrus, so that he will no longer waver as he does now between the two choices, but may single-mindedly direct his life towards love, accompanied by talk of a philosophical kind. And this is the end of the session.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Maria. That's great. Yeah, I wanted to ask if people could stay a little bit over because that section is so vivid and, the most strikingly descriptive and lush section that, so thank you so much for that. Look, I think we could probably go through this again next week and have a bit more of a discussion. But what I'll do now is people who want to stay around and keep talking about it, like we've already lost Anastasia, but people who want to stay around and keep talking about it, let's do it if people are happy with that, because I'm sure people have got some comments and questions about that. So thanks, Maria. If anyone has to go, goodbye. But let's keep